"Dad, why do I have to talk to a judge?" X asked, his small voice carrying a hint of bravery. Elon knelt beside him, giving his son's hand a reassuring squeeze. "It's a little unusual, buddy," he explained softly. "Judge Trenga just has a few questions about what you saw at the park last week. Just be honest, okay?" X nodded seriously, remembering the day at the park vividly. He had been playing near the duck pond when he saw two teenagers arguing. Things escalated quickly, and before he knew it, one boy had shoved the other into the water. What X didn't know then was that the boy who fell happened to be Judge Tranga's nephew. Through an unexpected chain of events, X was now called as a witness. As they made their way down the courthouse hallways, murmurs followed them. People seemed surprised to see such a young child heading toward courtroom 3. Waiting outside the heavy doors was their attorney, Ms. Chen. "Good morning," she said warmly, kneeling to X's height. "Are you ready to talk to the judge today?" X nodded, though his eyes were wide with worry. "Is he scary?" he whispered. Ms. Chen paused thoughtfully. "Judge Trenga can seem very serious, but remember, all you have to do is tell the truth." What she didn't mention was something many in legal circles knew. Judge Anthony Trenga had changed recently. Once admired for his fairness, personal struggles had made him increasingly unpredictable. He had developed an odd animosity toward Elon Musk, though the reasons were unclear. Entering the courtroom, X felt a sudden weight in the air. It was smaller than he expected, with dark wood panels and rows of stern-looking adults. At the front, seated high above, was Judge Trenga, his silver hair and permanent scowl giving him an imposing appearance. "All rise," the bailiff announced, and everyone stood as the judge settled into his chair. When they were seated again, X found himself directly under the judge's intense gaze. "We're gathered for case number 47,623 concerning the Westlake Park incident," Judge Trenga announced, in a loud, commanding voice. "And I see we have a very young witness today." His eyes narrowed as he fixed his attention on X. "Let's find out if the son of Elon Musk can distinguish between fantasy and reality. I've heard a lot about this special child." The way he emphasized "special" made X's stomach turn. A ripple of discomfort spread through the courtroom. This was highly unusual. Judges didn't typically address child witnesses like this, especially at the outset. Ms. Chen quickly stood. "Your Honor, I would like to remind the court that X is only 5 years old and should be questioned accordingly." Judge Trenga waved her off impatiently. "I'm aware of the witness's age, Counselor. I'm also aware of the claims about his so-called exceptional intelligence. Let's see if there's truth to it." Elon remained silent, but tightened his grip on the chair's arm. He gave X a subtle nod of encouragement. "X Musk," the judge called, "please approach the witness stand." X looked up at his father, who smiled despite the tension, urging him forward. With cautious steps, X made his way to the front, where a court officer had placed a booster seat on the large chair. After climbing up and settling himself, he found Judge Trenga leaning forward with a sharp smile. "Now, young man," the judge said, almost mockingly, "let's see how remarkable you truly are." He shuffled papers on his desk deliberately, creating a long silence that filled the room with unease. The only sounds were the scratch of pens and the occasional cough. Finally, peering over his glasses, the judge asked, "X Musk, do you know why you're here today?" X answered bravely, "Because I saw what happened at the park with the two big kids." "Good. Can you tell me what you saw, in your own words?" the judge asked, his tone now deceptively kind. X sat a little taller. "I was feeding the ducks when I heard loud voices. Two big boys were fighting with words. The taller boy, the one with the red shirt, pushed the other boy and he fell into the water." The judge nodded slowly. "Very good. And do you know who the boy who fell into the water was?" "No, sir." "I didn't know him," X replied honestly. "That boy was my nephew, Thomas," Judge Trenga said, his voice tightening. "Now I have a few more questions, ones that might be challenging for someone your age." Ms. Chen shifted uncomfortably, sensing the judge's intentions. "Your father claims you have an exceptional memory and understanding beyond your years," Judge Trenga continued, with a pointed look. "Let's test whether that's genuine or just a proud father's wishful thinking." He pulled a sheet of paper from the stack before him. "I'm going to read a short paragraph," he said. "When I'm done, you'll tell me what it means." X nodded. Nervously, determined to do his best, Judge Trenga then read from a dense legal brief, full of complex terms about precedent and statutory interpretation that would challenge even seasoned attorneys. Across the room, lawyers exchanged confused glances. This wasn't standard practice, certainly not for questioning a 5-year-old witness. When he finished reading, the judge leaned back, watching X carefully. X, still sitting in the witness stand, looked at the judge and said, "I don't know all those words." Judge Trenga let out a sigh of exaggerated disappointment. "Perhaps you're not as advanced as people claim," he said. Elon started to rise from his seat, but Miss Chen quickly placed a hand on his arm to stop him. "Let me try something simpler," Judge Trenga suggested. "If Thomas was standing 3 feet from the edge of the pond and was pushed with enough force to travel 5 feet, how far into the pond did he land?" X thought for a moment. "There. Into the water, I think. But the push looked really hard." The judge raised his eyebrows, clearly surprised by the correct answer. "Let's try another. If there were 7 ducks when you started feeding them, 3 more came, but 5 left when the boy started yelling, how many ducks remained?" Without hesitation, X answered, 5 ducks. Judge Trenga frowned slightly. "Correct again," he said, leaning forward. "Young man, do you know what perjury is?" Before X could answer, Miss Chen stood up. "Objection, Your Honor. This line of questioning is entirely inappropriate for a child witness. I'm simply establishing whether the witness understands the seriousness of testimony," Judge Trenga replied coolly. "Let me rephrase. X, do you know why it's important to tell the truth in court?" X nodded seriously. "My dad says lies hurt people, and the truth helps fix problems." Something flickered in Judge Trenga's eyes, maybe annoyance at such a simple yet profound answer. "Let's get back to what you saw. Are you absolutely certain that the boy in the red shirt pushed first? Could it have been the other way around? No, sir, X answered firmly. The boy in red pushed first. I was watching them because they were loud. Judge Trenga's expression darkened. But they were far from the ducks, weren't they? Why would you be watching them instead of the ducks you were feeding? X paused. The ducks swam away when the boys started yelling. That's why I looked. The judge shuffled through more papers, clearly looking for something to trip the child up. And what exactly did you hear them saying before the push? X replied. The boy in red said, "Take it back or else." The other boy said he wouldn't. Then there was the push. Judge Trenga sighed, clearly frustrated that X's story was still consistent. He decided to try a different tactic. Your father is an important man, and he's very busy, the judge said, his voice suggesting something else. Did he coach you? On what to say today? Did he tell you to remember it a certain way? X looked confused. Dad just said to tell what really happened. As the questioning continued, it became more and more evident that Judge Trenga wasn't seeking the truth. Instead, he was trying to embarrass X, trying to get him to contradict himself or make him seem less capable than he was. But with each question, the boy's clear and straightforward answers only showcased his remarkable composure and intelligence. An hour into the questioning, the courtroom's mood had shifted. Judge Trenga's attempts to fluster X were backfiring. The 5-year-old's simplicity and honesty only made the judge's complex traps seem petty. Let's try something else, Judge Trenga said, frustration creeping into his voice. X, can you tell me the names of all the planets in our solar system? The question was completely unrelated to the park incident, but X didn't hesitate. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. He paused, then added, Pluto used to be called a planet, but now scientists say it's a dwarf planet. A few people in the courtroom couldn't help but smile. The judge's face tightened slightly. Very good, he said stiffly. Now, if you're so observant, can you tell me how many windows are in this courtroom without looking around? X thought for a moment. 6 windows, 3 on each side wall. The judge's eyebrows shot up. The answer was correct. He hadn't expected the child to notice such a detail. Miss Chen interjected quickly. Your Honor, I must again object to this line of questioning. It's irrelevant to the incident at the park. I'm assessing the witness's reliability and observational skills, the judge snapped back. Elon watched with growing concern. He'd known Judge Trenga had some inexplicable bias against him, but he hadn't expected it to spill over to his 5-year-old son. Yet X was handling it with remarkable poise. Judge Trenga leaned forward again. X, do you know what a contradiction is? X nodded. It's when two things someone might be remembering wrong, X replied thoughtfully. Or maybe they saw different parts. The judge frowned, expecting a simpler answer like, someone is lying. X's nuanced response only showed how far beyond his years the boy's understanding was. By now, a few attorneys who had come for other cases had slipped into the courtroom, curious about the unusual proceedings. Word had spread through the building about Judge Trenga's strange questioning of Elon Musk's young son. "Let me be direct," Judge Trenga said sharply. "Your father has taught you to say these things, hasn't he? He's very smart and has trained you well." Before Miss Chen could object again, X replied, "My dad teaches me lots of things, but he wasn't at the park that day. I saw what happened." A court reporter in the front row had trouble suppressing a smile. Judge Trenga noticed and shot her a stern look. "Let's return to the incident," he said, his tone now more terse. "You claim the boy in the red shirt pushed first. Could you have been distracted by the ducks and missed something that happened before?" X thought seriously about this. "I might have missed something before I looked, but I saw the push that made the boy fall in the water." The judge's frustration grew. He had hoped to show that X was either coached or incapable of reliable testimony, but the boy was only proving how self-aware he was, acknowledging what he knew and what he might not know. The prosecutor finally stepped in. "Your Honor, we have sufficient testimony from this witness regarding the incident. The other witnesses have corroborated his account. Perhaps we could excuse him now." Judge Trenga ignored the suggestion. "Just a few more questions." He stared intensely at X. "Do you know what I do as a judge?" "You decide what's fair when people disagree," X answered. "And do you think it's easy to know what's fair?" X shook his head. "No. My dad says figuring out what's fair is one of the hardest things people do." Judge Trenga seemed taken aback by this simple yet wise answer. The courtroom grew unusually quiet. Something about X's earnestness had struck a chord with the judge. "X," Judge Trenga said, his voice now more contemplative than confrontational. "If someone does something wrong, should they always be punished?" Miss Chen started to object, but stopped when she saw Elon's slight head shake. Something was happening in the courtroom. X thought carefully before answering. "My dad says mistakes are how we learn. Punishment should help people learn, not just make them feel bad." Judge Trenga leaned back, studying X with new interest. "And what if someone keeps making the same mistake? What then?" "Then maybe they need more help to understand," X replied, simply. Some of the people in the courtroom exchanged glances. The child's answers, filled with wisdom, were delivered with a sincerity only a child could possess. "Let me ask you something else," Judge Trenga said, clearing his throat. "Do you think powerful people should be treated differently than ordinary people?" "No," X said firmly. "Dad says rules should be the same for everybody." "Even if they're very rich or famous?" the judge asked. "Especially then," X nodded seriously. "Dad says, with more power comes more responsibility." Judge Trenga's expression was unreadable as he processed this response. For a long moment he seemed lost, in thought. The prosecutor gently tried again. "Your Honor, given the time constraints and the age of the witness, perhaps we should—" "Just a moment," Judge Trenga interrupted, holding up his hand. He looked directly at X. "Young man, Do you know why I've been asking you all these questions? Today? X looked at him with clear, honest eyes. I think you're angry at my dad, and that makes you angry at me, too. The blunt observation sent a ripple through the courtroom. Several gasps filled the room. Elon stiffened, and Miss Chen closed her eyes briefly, preparing for an outburst, but it never came. Instead, Judge Trenga sat completely still, staring at X, as though completely stunned. After what seemed like an eternity, he spoke, his voice quieter now. What makes you think I'm angry at your father? X shrugged his small shoulders. The way you say his name, and you look at him like my friend Jake looks at the kid who broke his favorite toy. A wave of murmurs swept through the courtroom. To have the judge's personal feelings toward Elon Musk so innocently recognized and articulated by a 5-year-old was extraordinary. Judge Trenga flushed slightly, then stopped, seeming to reconsider his words. X, the judge said, his voice softer now. Do you think judges should let personal feelings affect their decisions? No, X replied confidently. Dad says judges are supposed to be fair to everyone, even people they don't like. The simplicity and moral clarity of the answer hung in the air. Judge Trenga looked away, troubled. When he finally looked back, something had changed. Thank